I'm here at the Thinking Digital conference with Rory Sutherland of Ogilvy UK. Hi Rory, thanks for taking time out to talk to me.
Pleasure.
Advertising has been severely hit by the recession the last couple of years. How do you think it's kind of coping with it, especially traditional advertising like newspapers, TV, radio?
Traditional advertising, I think, will recover in the short to medium term, but in the long term, for reasons of what I just call overwhelming technological threat, they will come under pressure. The sources of advertising funding for conventional television and newspapers in particular, I think in the long term there's a kind of systemic threat that they face, and we have to be conscious of that. Advertising, by which I mean the kind of thing that advertising agencies do, which of course is connected to but not necessarily at the hip, the business of buying media.
Yeah.
However, has the opportunity to reinvent itself in a much broader way. One of the things I spoke of today is the idea of actual, advertising as the creation of complementary value, of complementarity of the product you sell, rather than merely just being persuasion. Now, I think if we actually take a broader definition of what advertising is and what it can be, then the number of options that face us becomes bigger, even though, to be honest, the percentage of our time we spend with bought media, as opposed to earned media or owned media, may actually decline.
Okay, and just for example, parts of the third world they don't have PCs, but they all have mobile phones.
Yeah.
And how is this going to affect advertising in the future? And I assume it's a huge market that you all want to plug into at the moment.
It's one of the most spectacular cases of leapfrog, which is that the developing world has actually, in many cases, pretty good 3G coverage, better than
scary,
here, rather than embarrassingly. I mean, it always amazes me to sit on a plane for 13 hours and get off, and actually the signal you get and the download speed is better than at home. In some cases, the PC is impossible simply because the electricity supply is no good. My view is that the really significant thing is not only just the pervasiveness of mobile phones, but the fact that a smartphone, once you reach a certain volume, only costs about 50 cents more to manufacture than a bog standard phone. And so the fact that over time the smartphone will become the standard phone is what is really, really important, in terms of the fact that then, in many ways, the internet and the web will, in many countries, be predominantly experienced on a mobile device. You may have clever ancillary things, like large screens to which your mobile can actually beam a picture to actually improve certain operations. But no, in many cases, the application, you'll see the increasing widgetization of the internet, where the app actually becomes used more heavily than the browser. That, by the way, has some slightly worrying implications as well as some optimistic ones.
And do you have any particular favorite apps or mobile campaigns? I'm
a huge fan of branded utility in general. My view is that the first thing you should always do as a marketer is make your product easy and convenient to buy. Okay, so before you do anything else, until you've actually sorted out what I call the basic interface around a product, the usability of the thing, then everything else is secondary. So particular apps I love, the National Rail one for its fantastic use, the fact that actually, you can be sort of 5 minutes away from a station, it tells you which platform you go to, and you can therefore, direct the taxi accordingly in a few cases. Ocado is particularly astonishing, in the sense that if you told me, a couple of years ago that I'd routinely do a whole week's grocery shopping on a mobile device, I would have laughed you to scorn. And yet with the Ocado app for the iPhone and now actually for the Android phone, I find myself doing exactly that.
And then in those particular apps, they're basically the new internet apps are. And do you see a way of advertising plugging into each individual app and taking advantage of them?
Well, my definition of advertising includes an app for a brand or service as advertising.
Okay.
Because it adds complementary value to the consumption of a product, and therefore it's an ad. It's no different to brand value. However, no, they can carry advertising, they can in a sense be advertising. One of the interesting things I'd like to see is a mechanism where apps can be sold or given away for free by the enthusiasts who create them, but with the opportunity to activate an advertising platform or a branded platform on them should they hit a spectacular level of success. Because I think many apps are actually created by volunteers and they're done through love, and they're perfectly happy indeed, to share it with 5,000 people for free, and it's their own project. What I do feel is that if someone produces something so spectacularly broad in its appeal that it gets 1 million downloads, I do kind of feel they deserve some sort of financial reward for having done that. And so a system in an app which enables you at some later stage to activate either a branded component or a small advertising component, and therefore to give this person some sort of financial reward for their achievement, seems only fair to me.
And do you think there's a particular sector that's kind of taking the lead in the mobile and apps kind of market and is using it like to full advantage?
Obviously transportation will obviously have a big advantage. They have a particular incentive to actually take mobile very seriously. So anything to do with airlines, trains, etc., very much so. I'm also interested in just those clever little things which enable you to make use of what you might call micro moments of free time. Those tiny little things. I mean, gaming is part of it, but actually utility is another part. That time when you've got 3 minutes to wait for a bus, or you're stuck in traffic for 10 minutes and completely stationary, and you can just put that time to good use by doing something quickly and speedily, and that's interesting and useful.
And what does the future hold then for mobile and advertising, and where are we going? What kind of line are we taking?
Interestingly, quite a large part of it will probably be a battle between Google and Apple, which, to a great degree, great though my admiration is for Apple, I hope Google wins for now, in the sense that I do find the extent to which the Apple App Store, combined with his reluctance to put Flash on the browser on things like the iPad or the iPod, is a little bit of a dangerous land grab. And we all know that actually, Apple enthusiasts' love for Steve knows no bounds, even when Steve actually oversteps those bounds. I'm slightly concerned by the potential, even if not the actuality, of Apple to actually exercise excessive power and influence over what appears on the App Store and what doesn't. After all, we never would have accepted that degree of kind of censorship over what appeared on the web. So it seems a pity if now, 15, 20 years later, we have to accept that same degree of sanitization as to what appears in terms of the apps we have on our machines.
Perfect. Thanks very much, Rory, for taking time out to talk to us.
A pleasure.